Welcome back to Black Men Unfiltered, a space where we have real conversations about life, love, healing, growth, and the things that many of us were never taught how to talk about. So today we're talking about something that has kept a lot of people stuck in relationships for years. Something that sounds like love, but sometimes is actually fear. And that's the topic. Stop chasing potential. Because one of the biggest mistakes that we make in relationships is falling in love with who someone could be instead of accepting who they actually are. Now, let me be clear. There is nothing wrong with seeing the best in someone. There's nothing wrong with encouraging someone. And there's nothing wrong with believing that someone can grow. You know, that's actually part of love. But there is a difference between supporting someone's growth and waiting around for someone to become the person you need them to be. You know, a lot of people aren't in love with the person standing in front of them. They're in love with the future version they created in their mind. They're holding on to a promise. They're holding on to memories. They're holding on to the good moments and hoping that those moments come back. And sometimes we spend so much time fighting for someone's potential that we forget to ask ourselves questions like, am I actually happy with who this person is right now? Because the truth is, you don't build relationships with potential. You build a relationship with a person. So, while we chase potential, let's talk about why people stay. Why do we stay in relationships where we're constantly waiting for someone to change? Why do we keep telling ourselves things like they'll get better, they'll mature, they'll eventually see my value, they'll stop doing this, they'll become the person I know they can be? And sometimes it's because we can see something in them that other people don't see, right? Maybe you saw their heart, or maybe you saw their pain. Even maybe you even know their story. Maybe you know they didn't have the easiest childhood, or you know they've never been hurt before. And because you understand them, you start making excuses for them. You start saying things like, they didn't mean to hurt me, they're just damaged. They've been through a lot. And even though compassion is a beautiful thing, but compassion without boundaries can destroy you. Because understanding why someone hurts you doesn't mean you have to continue allowing them to hurt you. So let me say that again. Understanding someone's pain does not require you to become a victim of their pain. A lot of people, especially people with big hearts, struggle with this. They think leaving means they gave up on someone. They think setting boundaries mean they stop loving someone. But sometimes love means being honest enough to say, I care about you, but I can't keep losing myself trying to save you. So, loving who someone is today. You know, one of the hardest lessons in relationships is accepting people for who they are today, not who they were when you first met them, not who they promised they would become, not even who they are when they're trying to win you back, who they are constantly. Because nobody, or should I say, because anybody can show up for a reason or for a season. Anybody can apologize after they hurt you. Anybody can make promises when they're afraid of losing you. But who they are when life gets hard, who they are when nobody is watching, who they are when they don't get their way, that's the person you have to pay attention to. A lot of times we ignore patterns because we're focused on potential. We say, but they have a good heart. Yes, maybe they do, but a good heart without accountability can still cause damage. We say, but they love me. Yes, maybe they do, but love without respect, communication, and effort is incomplete. We say, but they're trying. Yes, trying does matter. Growth matters, but growth has evidence. Growth growth shows up through actions and not just words. Because at some point you have to stop asking who could they become and start asking who are they choosing to be. Which brings us to red flags versus growth. Now, let's talk about something very important. How do you know the difference between someone who is growing and someone who just keeps making excuses? Because everyone has flaws. Not everybody's perfect. You are not perfect. I am not perfect. We all have things we need to work on. And a healthy relationship is not about finding someone without problems. It's about finding someone who's willing to face their problems. Growth actually looks like someone who can say, I was wrong. Yes, I hurt you. I need to work on myself. I understand why that affected you. Growth looks like change behavior, not just emotional conversations, not just apologies, not just promises, but because an apology without change becomes a routine. Right? Now let's talk about the red flags. Red flags are when someone repeatedly does the same thing and expects you to keep accepting it. Red flags are when they blame everyone else. Red flags are when they make you feel guilty for having needs. Red flags are when constantly having to explain basic respect. Red flags are when you're giving 100% and they're comfortable giving 20. A person is growing, a person who is growing may make mistakes, but they take responsibility. A person who refuses to grow will make you feel like you're the problem for being hurt. So pay attention to the difference. So that brings us to knowing when to walk away. Now, this is probably the hardest part, knowing when to walk away. Because sometimes the hardest relationships to leave are not the ones where there's no love. They're the ones where there is love, but there's no peace. And I think a lot of people struggle with this because they think if I leave, that means I didn't love them enough. But that's not true. Sometimes walking away is an act of love. You know, that's love for yourself. You can love someone and still admit that this relationship is hurting me. You can care about someone and still say, I cannot continue loving off potential. Because your life is happening right now. Your happiness is happening right now. And your peace is happening right now. You cannot spend years waiting for someone to become ready while you're becoming exhausted. And I want to say this especially to the men. A lot of us were taught to endure everything, right? To be strong, to hold everything together, to not quit. But there's a difference between commitment and staying somewhere that is destroying you. You know, strength is not always holding on. Sometimes strength is knowing when something is no longer healthy. So today's message is simple. Stop chasing potential. Stop falling in love with a future version of someone while ignoring the reality right in front of you. Love people for who they are. You know, support their growth, encourage them, and always pray for them. But don't abandon yourself waiting for someone else to become whole. Because the right relationship is not one where you constantly have to convince yourself to stay. The right relationship is one where two people are choosing growth together. Two people are showing up. Two people are healing. Two people are building. But because love is not just about seeing someone's potential. Love is about seeing their reality and asking, can we build something healthy from here? This has been Black Man Unfiltered. I thank you for listening. And remember, your heart matters. Your peace matters. Your growth matters. And never forget, a person's potential is not a promise. Their actions are the truth. Until next time, stay real, stay honest, stay unfiltered. Thank you.